Left of the box. In my last couple live streams, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned that I am pissed off with Justin Trudeau for lots of reasons, but in particularly recently, there was the $250 check that they're sending out to everyone who had an income, which means people living with disabilities will be ruled out of getting that $250 check. And he's been a very arrogant prick asshole over it and just saying, no, this is about rewarding people who can work. Fuck those people who can't work. This is about showing extra gratitude towards those who actually contribute to society. The rest of them can just go fuck themselves in dire poverty that we have legislated them into. He is horrendous when it comes to people living with disabilities and his treatment of them. Absolutely brutally horrendous. And I covered it in my last live stream, but it didn't end there because, he also tweeted this out recently. When all persons with disabilities can fully participate, our economy, our society, and our communities will be so much stronger. We're not there yet, but thanks to the relentless work of advocates, Canada is becoming a better, more inclusive place. The only people with disabilities he ever acknowledges are those who can fully participate in the economy. The programs he puts in place for people with disabilities is to help them get back into the workforce without really understanding a lot of people with disabilities. It doesn't matter what you do, they can't participate in the workforce because they're living with a disability. And it just pisses me off, again, so much how arrogant and short-sighted and ableist this asshole is. But he puts a smile on it. And as this person was pointing out, saying, as a parent, Rob Gilazoo, as a parent of 2 kids with disabilities, I've got pretty much the opposite take to the Prime Minister. We've seen no meaningful improvement in the federal measures to support the inclusion of children with disabilities. And if anything, we've been backsliding at the provincial level. And that is true. Because when it comes to people relying on disability payments, it hasn't been keeping up with inflation for the rare times that it actually has gone up. The amount has gone up, but there's no more help getting accessibility to homes that are accessible for people, to places for people to live. Of course, the absolute one of the most disgusting things on the federal level is the fact that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have made medical assistance in dying more accessible than, the care people need, the assistance people need to live in society. And there have been people who have applied for and have been granted medical assistance in dying because they could not access something as simple as a chemical-free place to live. Or they couldn't get the in-home care they needed, or they couldn't get a multitude of things to help with their disabilities. And so they applied for medical assistance in dying. And Justin Trudeau has made that more accessible than, granting people dignity of life. So disgusting. And that he constantly will tweet out and be like, no, we're there for you. Absolute horrendous human being that man is. But as Rob was saying, that on provincial level, it has been backsliding as well. Well, you see, representation matters. And Sarah Jama, who's probably one of the best politicians we have in this country, federally or provincially, she is provincially. And she is an advocate, partly because she is also living with disabilities. And one of the most underrepresented groups in government are people living with disabilities. There are lots of people in government with mental health issues and mental health, what should be qualified as a disability, that just go ignored. But, you never see somebody you almost never see somebody with like mobility devices, hearing devices, people who are blind. that need devices to help them with their regular tasks. Because the barriers put in place for people living with disabilities to actually make it into office are immense. And they don't get the help. And then, so we get a wonderful, wonderful person finally in office who can speak to these issues. And yeah, the quality of life people with disabilities have in this province has been decreasing as of late because of the Doug Ford government. Here is Sarah Jama. She tweeted out, "Today is International Day for Persons with Disabilities. As the only person with cerebral palsy to be a member of the Ontario Legislative Assembly, I wrote to Minister Raymond to express my disappointment with his government's handling of accessibility in the province." So her letter is, "As you know, today is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. As the only person with a developmental disability, cerebral palsy, to be elected in the history of the Ontario Legislative Assembly, I thought it was important to personally write to you and express my disappointment with this government's handling of accessibility in the province." Ontario was slated to be accessible by 2025 in accordance with the Accessibility of Ontarians with Disability Act, AODA. With the consistent freezing of standards committees, no real accountability measures in place for violations of the AODA, and no real plans to meet the 2025 deadline, we are in a critical phase for decision making. You must act to change the course and prioritize this portfolio of yours. There is a significant shortage of accessible housing and rehabilitation services for adults with disabilities in Ontario. Education workers are overwhelmed as they are not provided with necessary resources to adequately support disabled students. Disability advocates have long called for the inclusion of housing and education standards with Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. Autistic youth have been abandoned by our publicly funded healthcare system. Most concerning, disabled individuals across Ontario who are unable to work are forced to live in deep poverty with the Ontario Disability Support Program, ODSP, with many considering medical assistance in dying made as a means of escaping the severe hardship they face. Furthermore, many individuals who require home care to survive are not receiving it. For example, a constituent in Hamilton Centre was left in her bathtub for over 24 hours because her home care worker did not show up. Accessibility is more than just a checklist with standards. Your portfolio requires you to collaborate with an intersectional way with the Ministry of Health, Housing, Social Services, and others to ensure that disabled people from all backgrounds are not legislatively punished simply because their bodies function differently. Raise ODSP rates to a livable wage. Fund special education in Ontario. Invest in accessible and supportive housing. Meet your minimum AODA standards by 2025 as promised. Stop privatizing healthcare. This will help build a society where disabled people are valued for who they are rather than being reduced to a category of productive or unproductive. I request a meeting at your earliest convenience to discuss how we can work together to address these urgent issues and ensure meaningful progress on accessibility in Ontario. Absolute legend, Sarah is. Just absolute legend. I want her to be Prime Minister of this country. Those types of situations that she mentioned are not isolated. And again, it is just, this is a federal and provincial responsibility, and neither of them are doing the full extent of what they can do to support people living with disabilities. Like, I still live in constant anxiety that something is going to happen to my disability payments. And if that happens, the effect it could have on my life might be terminal, because I can't survive without it. I'm incapable of holding down any sort of normal job, because it's not like I can look at a job and be like, okay, make sure it has this, this, and this, and this, and this for me to do, and it checks all these, and I'm qualified to do those. Okay, now, forward government, here are the jobs that I have deemed I can do well. Force them to hire me. That's never going to happen. Instead, they want to try to force people with disabilities to work in jobs they can't do. They'd much rather the people suffer than the corporations. But just, Sarah Jama, absolute legend. Just wonderful, wonderful person.